Should Hide in the Light have seen the light of day? Hello and welcome to RotD Review of the Day, and today I am taking a look at the 2018 movie Hide in the Light. This is a movie that was just kind of a random pick by me. I decided to go ahead and just give it a whirl. It was somewhat recent. I kind of wanted to watch a recent movie, and it was in the queue, so decided to give it a shot there. And ultimately, where it landed for me was a low-budget, ultimately, unfortunately, forgettable movie. It's not really one that I would recommend to anybody, but to get into why, let's get into the categories. As always, 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. And the plot of this one, it started out with a little girl being brought to a Catholic orphanage in the 60s, 70s, decades ago. And she is an orphan, or at least her father can't be found. She is brought to the orphanage. She is very sensitive to light of any sort, not just daylight, but candlelight, light of any sort. And you get the idea that maybe there's something sinister going on, and then fast forward to present day. And you have a group of friends that fancy themselves urban explorers, which, if you're unfamiliar with the term, it's people that find abandoned buildings and go there to document, observe, just generally photograph and enjoy the ambiance of an abandoned building and the history therein, get the feel and the vibes of the place. And it's kind of an interesting thing. It's not my cup of tea, but I know some folks that do it, and that's generally what these people in the movie are doing. And they decide, hey, there's this orphanage that has been abandoned for 50 years now, so why don't we go there and check it out? All right. And so they go there, and of course, things are going wrong. The orphanage is obviously haunted by this little girl, and whatever demonic entity was attached to her, blah. And I gave the plot an 8 out of 25. The whole thing about the enemy being afraid of the light and so forth, it's not a terribly new concept. It reminded me a little bit of Lights Out and any number of other movies where you shine a flashlight and, So, I mean, just not very original. The characters, they were either forgettable or obnoxious. And that was something that actually did rub me the wrong way, is the urban explorers that I have known in my life and the ones that I am familiar with as far as reading on forums and, any sort of interaction I've had, it's always been a kind of a general atmosphere of respect for the building that they're going into. Not just the history behind it, but it is incredible how fast nature takes over a building that is unoccupied and how unsafe they can become in a very short amount of time. So not only is there some respect for the history of the building, but there's a massive amount of respect for the safety involved of the participants of the urban exploration. And in this one, there was just a lot of disrespect in general. It was, even though that you had characters that were easily in their late 20s, early 30s, they were acting like 16-year-olds horsing around and generally showing a massive amount of disrespect for each other and for the building that they were in. It was tough to watch, and it was just kind of it was obnoxious. And there was a subplot of the two main characters, brother and sister. The brother winds up getting, at the beginning, before they get into the building, brother gets or announces an engagement to somebody else that is going to be coming along. And the sister is seething over this, and it creates this subplot of underground anger that kind of surfaces as the movie goes on. But honestly, it's just really, really weak. If you're going to have this kind of hidden tension between characters because of some infraction that has happened that one of them is holding a grudge on, it kind of needs to have some weight behind it. If it's something along the lines of, your family was killed by a bus and, I was the driver of that bus and I've never wanted to tell you. Okay, you got some, real gravitas to the drama happening behind the scenes there. If it's, I tied your shoes together when you were 12, it doesn't create the same amount of tension. And in this case, she is seething and spends the entire movie seething because he didn't tell her about the engagement before he announced it generally to the friends. It seemed pretty weak. Yeah, it just seemed pretty weak, and I was just rolling my eyes every time, she would, just stew about it. It's like, just let it go. This is stupid subplot drama that doesn't need to be there. Could have been so much more impactful if they had decided to go a different route with that. Regardless, where I found myself landing with the plot more than anything else is it works as a concept, not an hour and a half long movie. This is a movie that would have benefited more from being a short, something that would have wound up in one part of an anthology, or just released as a short film on YouTube. Why not? I think that they would have been better served for that. Maybe, try to get funding down the road for a different project. I just did not find it to be, between the characters, the premise, the subplots, nothing about it really worked for an hour and a half long movie. I gave it an 8 out of 25. And that's the best score that this is going to get. The Intent, I gave a 4 out of 25. Every single scare that it attempted fell completely flat. Nothing about it was scary. All the jump scares were just misses. The storyline I already mentioned was not very engaging. The characters I already mentioned was not very interesting or obnoxious. Nothing about what this movie was intending to be was successfully presented to the screen. So 4 out of 25. The acting, it was very stiff. It was the difference between speaking naturally and remembering your lines, the difference between having conversations and reciting dialogue. It was very, very stiff. It didn't work, and that was for every single character in it. Honestly, the only times that it ever felt natural was when they were being outright obnoxious to each other. So it was either stiff or it was annoying. So 6 out of 25 for the acting. And the technical, I gave a 3 out of 25. And that's primarily because of the setting. The orphanage that they were in, that had been abandoned for 50 years, looked like it had been closed for 2 weeks and could have used some light dusting. Some of the wallpaper was peeled, big deal. If you've ever seen pictures of buildings that have been abandoned for any amount of time, any significant amount of time, anywhere, past 10 years, like I said earlier, it is amazing how fast and how drastic nature takes over a building when it is unoccupied and sits idle. I'll throw up a few pictures here of some buildings that were left abandoned for the last 30 or 40 years. Forget about 50. And, I'll provide some contrasting screenshots from the film. It was really, really, I don't know. It really took me out of it. And I could make a lot of other technical things there. The little girl, when she was showing she was just really not scary at all, even though, even with blacked out eyes, it just didn't work. The engagement ring that the brother gave his fiance, it was just this massive rock that it's either costume jewelry or it was worth $50 million. Just a million little things like that just wound up really taking me out of it. And that is where the technical is so important to a movie like this, is the fine-grained details that pull you into a movie, as opposed to just missed marks all around that pull you out of it. And that's what this movie did. So 3 out of 25 for the technical gives us a total score of 21 out of 100 points. And that's where I landed with it. I really can't recommend this movie to anyone. It's worth passing. If you see it in your queue, I would recommend against it. By all means, not the worst movie I've ever seen, but just it's not worth the time. That's about it. It's just not worth the time. If you're spending any kind of money for membership or rentals or anything, it's definitely not worth the money. So that's where I landed with Hide in the Light. I thank you for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.